Are we ready? A one, a two, a one, two, three, and hello, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to this episode of Microscope. My name is Samantha.
And my name is Mike. And today we want to talk to you all about how widespread is climate change.
We realize that we talk about climate change a lot, but this
It's
is
the only
really
thing we talk about.
but this is really important because we're going to talk specifically about what exactly is affected by climate change and where. Do all ecosystems react the same to climate change? We're just going to break it down. So why don't we talk first about the ecosystems that are going to be affected by climate change and the differences between the effects on those? Why don't you start us off with that?
When we talk about different ecosystems, I want to put that into context in that different. So let's just take the United States in consideration. There are
Okay.
there are numerous ecosystems that you can consider, right? You have the Northeast, which has a lot of deciduous forest and a lot of pine trees, and it gets
Wait, what's deciduous? Like the trees
leafy
that mulch?
leafy trees.
Leafy trees. Okay. Thank you. Look, I get emails and DMs from people all the time, and it's funny, Mike, because they won't send it to the Microscope Instagram. They send it privately to me, and they're like, "Hey, in next week's episode, could you please ask Mike to explain what this is?" So when you say things like that, I must stop you. But
No.
anyways, okay,
Well, so
leafy
I figured it
trees.
out. A
Thank you.
deciduous tree is a giant flowering plant.
Aha. Okay.
Like that's the specifics of it.
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you see that over there, but then that's the type of ecosystem. Then down in like Louisiana, where it's like
A swamp.
super hot, it's basically a swamp. Or then you have over in the
Shrek lives there.
mountains of Colorado, where it's like snowy and there's mountains and things like that. So these are you know
All
ecosystems.
separate ecosystems. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, okay. So
And
when
what
we
we
look
what
at
we want to talk about today is that all three of those, in the quotations, all three of those ecosystems are going to be affected by climate change within different timescales as
Mhm.
well as in different severities.
Exactly. So even with that being said, climate change has influenced almost like 80% of all biological
80%. Yeah,
processes,
yeah.
which is that's a pretty big number.
Well,
And I think that came from Sheffer and his co-authors from the University of Florida. But let's talk about climate change. I want to dial it back a little bit because I feel like, again, we're hearing about climate change all the time, and we're hearing, oh, this is awful and that's awful, and look at the ocean, and look at the jungle, look at this. But I think it's really difficult because there is a disconnect between us hearing about all these horrible things happening as a result of climate change, but then actually being able to see it with our own eyes and see it in our backyard. But one thing that we do hear about a lot, and I want you to bring this into the light, let's think about all of the species, all the animals that are going extinct. And there was one animal that has gone extinct as a direct link to climate change. And what was it? It's like a little mouse, right?
yeah, it was a tiny little Australian mammal called the Bramble K mellomus or mellomise.
Mm,
I'm so bad at pronouncing things, but yeah, it's this cute
it's
tiny
okay.
little rat thing. And the reason why we can directly link its extinction to to climate change is that it was only found on this very small island down in Fiji, and because of the increase in water levels, the entire island's underwater, and this mammal literally has nowhere else to live.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, right. I'm over
So
here talking about it like but it's really sad.
no, that's really sad. And I understand like Mother Nature, I understand processes, and there's no such thing as balance. I'm not allowed to say the word balance anymore. I know that, but that does it makes me really sad. And so, something that we touched on a little bit when we were talking about coral a few episodes ago,
Mhm.
we were saying, okay, so basically like coral is just it's a symbiotic relationship, and when it loses like one half of that relationship, the other
It
half of it is
dies.
like,
Yeah.
well, thanks. So, so coral was actually, it's been documented to sort of move. These organisms are moving to different regions, and that's what's happening as well with other ecosystems. I know that scientists are using various metrics to really understand how quickly the effects of climate change can be seen within an ecosystem. But I want you to talk to me a little bit more about that. Like, what are they predicting with those metrics?
What are they predicting with those metrics? So essentially, as the temperature increases and the water levels rise, ecosystems are getting lost to this. So
Mm.
areas that were normally, let's just, use examples here. So,
Oh, I don't know, land.
well, land, right? So let's take like an area of land, had an average temperature of about 70 degrees. But now with climate change, it's an average temperature of 80 degrees. So species or, animals that cannot survive in 80-degree weather are now shifting their ecosystems into 70-degree um, areas that have the 70-degree
Hmm.
temperature.
So it's sort of like what we're seeing with the coral. The coral's like, look, like, first of all, I can't even make my own food here. It's like, it's way too hot. I'm leaving. So now the animals are sort of having to do the same thing, and plants as well. But let's just use animals in this instance. Like, if these, let's say like elephants or something, if these elephants can't be in 80, 85, 90-degree
They're moving.
weather all the time, they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to go and
They're
see
going
you
on
later.
skiing trips for a long time to where it's colder.
I can't blame them. I cannot blame them. So I think what's interesting about this, and like I feel really bad because you and I both tried to talk about modeling in the last episode, but like I think
Yeah, yeah.
we both got a little tripped up because we just did. But it's really interesting because science can use these predictions to understand like which species are most at risk of extinction due to greater barriers involved in like their migration, and it can help with conservation efforts. um, I think a lot of times we hear about like zoos and, oh, the zoos are evil, the zoos are awful, but unfortunately now, like, am I all for zoos? No, but do I appreciate the research that really well run zoos and well funded zoos can conduct? Yeah, I absolutely do.
Well, zoos are essentially a way to control the conservation.
Yeah.
And I think I don't want to say within our lifetime, but definitely within our grandchildren's times, like there will be species that are no longer found in their natural
In the
habitats and are
wild,
only
right?
found in zoos. Because
Yeah.
basically they've lost that environment and they can only survive within man-made environments, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I don't know. I've always like zoos and aquariums for me have always kind of been like, like I love the opportunity to see things up close. And it's not always just about the animals. There's a lot of really interesting plant life that they incorporate into some of the, the little terrariums and the habitats. But I don't know.
They're
It's
just as
becoming,
important.
oh,
The
very,
plants,
very,
yeah.
very. So let's go away from animals and let's talk a little bit about like, like mountains, for example. I know that you had a really interesting statistic about.
Let's make a very a drastic change.
Well, I want to talk about landscapes, because
Mm.
they look, I'm just we can't focus on animals all the time,
But
okay? We just spent 9 minutes talking about how brokenhearted we are over a mouse in Australia. So talk to us about all these different like landscapes and how much of the plant like biodiversity they actually hold and how important it is and but what it means when you factor in climate change.
exactly. So let's talk about mountains, for instance. They currently hold up to a quarter of all plant biodiversity. And a lot of
Wait, wait,
this,
wait. What is plant biodiversity?
but so biodiversity is in terms of how many species we can find. So
Okay, so how
I
many
think
different types of plants?
Yeah, so getting back to the deciduous, like, right, like there's a ton of different deciduous trees, right? You have maple, you have birch, you have oak, you have all these ones, and you could find a lot of different, or a lot of these within a small area of
Very
land.
small area. Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what we're talking about with mountains. So there's a quarter of all the plant biodiversity is found within mountain ecosystems, and
That's
this
crazy.
has to say that again.
I said that's crazy.
That's
A
yeah,
quarter of the
crazy.
plant biodiversity is like up in the mountains. All
Up in the
right, cool.
mountains, yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the very complex topography that is associated with mountainous regions. And what I mean by
So by that, yes. Please
yeah,
explain what
so
you mean.
topography is essentially an increase in altitude. So,
Hmm.
100 feet, you're 1,000 feet above water level. Then, another 200 feet, you're 2,000 meters above water
So
level.
you add on a zero.
Well,
Got it.
yes, you
I
get it.
never knew that.
Well, no,
Thank you.
no, no, no.
Oh no.
That
Wait.
was no, that was just an example.
Oh, okay. I'm like, wow, that is a really. I was honestly, Mike, I got really excited for a second because I can't do math. I literally can't count. Like when I was in college, I tried to get out of my math classes, and I went to my advisor. I'm like, I think I have a learning disability for mathematics, and she's like, shut up. So I got really excited for a second there because I thought, oh my gosh, the first math problem I can actually solve. But okay, that was only an
Yeah, no,
example.
that was an
Nobody,
example.
please put down your pens. That was only an example.
Yeah,
So,
that
all
was
right,
just
but
an
they do.
example.
What we're trying to say, though, is that mountains do offer a very diverse climate landscape. And that's a really good thing because that means that as the temperature increases, the distance to reach a cooler environment is much shorter for the species to travel. So, for all the elephants that want to go skiing, it's
They
actually
don't
not
have
going to be.
they don't have far to go. Exactly.
No,
Within
good.
these mountainous regions. Exactly.
And I would just like to note, everyone, that like Mike is so good about sending me these articles. And last week, before we recorded, I took it upon myself to write out an outline because we've really got to keep, Mike on track. And I made it all different
We
colors.
got to
So,
keep the
Mike,
facts straight.
well, yes, that too. But we've also got to keep you straight because you have a tendency to be like, and the mountains are really, oh, wow, look out the window. I'm like, okay, there he
I
goes.
still
But
shut my
I
blind.
would
My
like to
neighbors
say that
at me.
I let Mike write the outline this week. He's like, no, I got it. And in the notes of the outline, he wrote for me to say, oh, wow, Mike, you're so smart and beautiful.
I mean, I
Mike.
got you to say it. I got you to say it.
Okay, so aside from the fact that you are very smart and you are very beautiful. I wish you had more of a presence on social media so people could see how beautiful you are. But
But
what
I
you're
don't have
saying,
time. That's the problem. I would love to
I
be
know.
famous on Instagram, but like, that's a lot of fucking effort.
It's a lot of work. It is a
A lot
lot
of
of work, trust
yeah.
me.
I
We have like a
nobody got for
6-person
that.
marketing team. It's silly. But okay, but what you are saying is that the effects of climate change will take longer to manifest within these environments where the air temperature decreases quickly due to the increase in altitude. But
Yes,
in
yes.
flatter areas that do not have these drastic changes in altitude, they're home to the species that will be affected more quickly by the warming planet, kind of like the mouse. And
Exactly,
that
exactly.
sucks. That
That
totally
poor
sucks.
mouse.
I know, the poor thing. I had a pet mouse. She was a feeder mouse, and I named her Mrs. Mulberry. And she was the cutest thing, and she'd sit with me, and she was great. And then one day I came home, and she had passed away, so I put her in a Pop-Tart box and drove over to my parents' house. They were having this like formal dinner party, and I walked in crying, and they're like, "Sam, what's wrong?" And so right there in the middle of the formal dining room, I'm like, I came home from work and Mrs. Mulberry is dead. And my dad was so sweet. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. They both gave me a big hug. And my dad goes, look, Where is she? I said, she's in this Pop-Tart box that I'd put inside of like a Talbot's bag. I mean, I'm 100 years old. Anyways, he's like, let's put
Wait,
Mrs.
Talbot's
Mulberry.
still around?
Excuse me. Yes, it is. I was just browsing their website today.
Oh my god, that is like an old people's. Oh god. No,
But
that's
anyways,
it's
listen.
for young at heart people.
Thank
There we
you.
go.
Well, anyways, we put Mrs. Mulberry in the freezer and then we buried her the next day. But maybe that's why I'm more emotionally attached. But anyways, okay, so let's stay on topic.
Let's get back.
Okay, there's a lot more than just what we're talking about now that we do have to take into consideration. And I know that there was a study done by Sandel. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Sandel, yes.
Sandel. Thank you. I'm like, Sandal? No.
Well,
And some co-authors. And this is from
Denmark.
who?
They're from Denmark?
Yes.
Yes.
And what did that show? You talk about this.
So
I couldn't highlight this.
Getting back to the idea is that we want to understand how quickly climate change will affect different areas, right? It'll affect mountain regions differently than it'll affect flatter and regions closer to sea level. So we want to understand what efforts can we put in to conserve these species. And what this group from Denmark looked at is that depending on how unique a habitat is, so how unique a habitat is for amphibians, mammals, and birds are going to affect how readily these specific species will be able to be readily conserved by our efforts. Exactly. And I think it was a little bit, so while I was talking about it, I thought about like, what do people like habitat uniqueness? What does that even mean? Right? So habitat uniqueness means how specific of an area is it? So in terms of that small island in Fiji, that was a very unique place where only that one's, where that mouse species lived. But some place like mountainous regions, right? We'll get back to the mountainous regions. There's multiple different mountain ranges here in the US. So mountain ranges are not as unique. So amphibians, mammals, and birds that live within one mountain regions always have more than one place to go to. While these poor Fijian mouses do not, their habitat is very unique.
Got it. So basically what you're trying to tell me is that like organisms that are within like a wide ranging habitat are going to be more resistant to climate change, but those that have a narrower range are more endangered. So basically like animals and plants that can really only exist in one area are at greater risk for going extinct because they can't adapt. So
and that's where we should focus our conservation efforts on.
Okay, got it. Well, you did do something very cute. You sent me a bunch of pictures of all these adorable animals, like the world's smallest chameleon, and that was in Madagascar. Oh my god, it's so small. It like tip of my finger small. And then the poison dart frog that's on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. Have you ever been to Costa Rica?
I have. I spent a whole month there.
Oh my god.
Love that place. Love that place.
Oh my god, the most beautiful place in the world. First of all, like let's just say the literacy rate in Costa Rica is what? Isn't it like 98%? So everyone there speaks
they don't have an army. They don't have an army. All their money goes to like education and like making things better for the people.
Absolutely. Well, what I loved about Costa Rica not only was the people, but how, conscious they were of protecting the environment. And then wasn't it in like 2017 or 2018 that Costa Rica ran 100% for 300 days on renewable energy?
Yeah, I was so proud. I was like, good, because that's a fucking amazing country, and I'm glad they did that.
You know what was interesting was when I was in Costa Rica, I remember I was living in a house with, I think, 8 other people, and the family that we were living with was like, okay, like, we turn on the water for showers, or not the water, sorry. We turn on the heater to heat the water for showers, but we only do it from 8 to 9. So like all 9 of you need to shower between that time. And you know what? It wasn't the end of the world. We did it. And it
Yeah.
was great. You know,
You
and
know
then
what was
what another
also
interesting
weird?
thing was, did you put toilet paper in the garbage
Yes, that
can?
was exactly
Yeah.
what I was gonna say. Yeah, yeah.
Yep, because they can go compost it. It's very simple. It's an incredible country. But when I was there, I didn't see. I don't think I saw a poisonous dart frog. I'll see if I can find a picture of it. But I did see one of those
They're
beautiful
beautiful.
frogs
They're
that
beautiful.
has the red body and the blue legs. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm, maybe.
Okay. Well, they're beautiful. So I
Let
saw
me
one
look
of
up
those, but I
blue-legged frog.
blue-legged frog. I also saw. Oh man, I've got to find the pictures. I'll
Oh,
post them all over.
those are poison dart frogs.
Wait, so I have seen a poison dart frog? That's
You have.
insane.
Oh my God! Don't go near it.
No, I didn't. It was sitting
Okay.
on a leaf, and the tour guide was like, "No, no, 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 no," and I was like, "Yep, you got it." I also saw a little mini python. It was baby, like
Oh,
baby python.
that's
But
cute.
I love snakes. I think I'm the only person that likes snakes and spiders. Like I really
Oh,
love them.
I don't like spiders. Honestly,
Oh,
all
I love
spiders
them.
can fucking die in climate change. I don't
Oh no,
care.
no, don't say that. That's not nice. That's not nice. But then we also, so we can't forget about the pink iguana that's in the
Uh,
Galapagos, which is beautiful.
Galapagos Islands are just like a beautiful place in and of themselves.
You know what? Let's just like throw caution to the wind and let's just move there. We'll live in a hut. You and me, we'll bring all of our house
No,
plants.
you
It'll be
need to like
great.
do lots of things to move there. It's not like somewhere you can be like, I'm gonna move there. You need like, you need what are they called?
I don't know.
Like, uh, you
Like a
need like,
hut?
oh no, you need like a legalization to even visit the place.
Oh, stop. I
Like
don't mean.
a permit. There we go.
Okay, I'm not set. Anyways, there's the thorny devil lizard, and also the kangaroos in
Yeah.
Australia
Oh
that
my
are
God,
that are
raise your hand if you like kangaroos. Somebody's driving in their car right now, raising their
raising
hand.
their there is someone in a lab
We
over in the UK who
appreciate
just
you.
raised
We
their gloved
appreciate you.
hand.
We
But then
appreciate
also the swirl cactus
the
that's in
guano.
the what?
It's well, actually, I don't know how it's pronounced.
I call it swirl.
That's probably the
That's
correct pronunciation.
I lived in Arizona for like 4 months, and I was told it was called a swirl cactus.
Yeah, well,
So,
I can't speak anything, so you're probably
but it's in Arizona, and it's also in the Whipple Mountains in California. So those are all the things that are, that are at risk. But there's also like, and I don't even like to say this out loud, but like, aren't hummingbirds at risk as well? And I
hummingbirds are at risk, and I actually have
no.
study, a really
Okay.
cool study. So what makes them most at risk? So kind of getting back to that, or talking about like a symbiotic relationship. So we know hummingbirds are the like really tiny birds that flap their wings really fast and eat the nectar of flowers.
Hmm.
Okay. So a study that was actually done by this group, oh my God, I need to pronounce this name,
You could
or
do it.
Dalsgaard.
Ah.
Dalsgaard from Spain. Bo Dalsgaard. Ah, that name Bo. I could totally name one of my kids Bo. Okay, off topic. So Dalsgaard from Spain, they looked at sort of this symbiotic relationship between hummingbirds and the nectar flowers that they eat from. And they
Hmm.
saw that the flowers are actually more resistant to climate change and will actually more readily transition to new environments than the hummingbirds, which is kind of quite sad because as climate change progresses, you'll see sort of like the habitat or the food for hummingbirds, continue to perpetuate, but you won't see the hummingbirds move with them.
Hmm.
But I think one of the caveats to that is that it also depends on how quickly hummingbirds can adapt. So
Okay.
right? When they studied this, they only looked at 31 different locations throughout Spain. So that's
Okay.
not representative of all hummingbirds, but it's an interesting take on we may see habitats transfer, but we may not
Hmm.
see species transfer with them as well.
Got it. Got it. So they're not mutually exclusive, which is another really important
Exactly.
thing
Yeah.
to remember. So, all right, like for every single episode, we like to offer, all right, so we understand that all these changes are occurring. What are scientists doing?
What are scientists doing?
What are
Oh,
you
is that
doing,
what I come in?
Mike? What
What
are
am I
you and your
doing?
friends
What am I
doing?
doing? I'm trying to get through all the seasons of Game of Thrones before April.
I can't. I can't. But in
Okay.
addition,
In addition, so there was actually this group at the International Institute for Environmental Studies in Japan
mhm,
that essentially showed that within the next 80 years, we will see the biggest shift in marine biodiversity.
hmm,
And they're going to see this shift away from. So essentially, most of the biodiversity within marine ecosystems are found around the equator, where it's
mhm,
very, but as the equator becomes uninhabitable because it gets too warm, these marine species are going to shift away from the equator.
yep. So
Okay.
just like the coral is like, I'm leaving.
Just like
Everything else is like,
exactly.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. And so because of this, right, as they increase within more northern and southern regions, we're actually going to see a homogenization, or maybe not a homogenization is probably too complex of a word, but sort of a blending of
Oh,
species. So you'll
got
see
it.
species from northern environments and southern environments mixing. And so
Hmm.
that's what they measured, right? That's what they measured. But what are scientists doing? So when we understand where the migration or where species will migrate, we can provide this information to
Hmm.
conservationists who can then enact um, useful laws or things that will better conserve
Resources,
source.
research,
Exactly.
physical
Exactly.
places. Got it.
I think one
So,
of the big themes that we continue to talk about is science is just like we're trying to find out what's going to happen in the next 80 years so
right,
that the people in power and the money that we spend can be put in the proper piggy banks.
right. And so that we can be prepared. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
everyone's always like, all right, science, well, what do you say? What do you say?
Uh,
And it's like, well, look, you guys are working to figure things out. You're using these predictive models, which we touched on a little bit in this episode, but we also talked about them in the last episode to look at that data and say, all right, well, let's apply some statistics to it and say that if we see this same pattern again in precipitation, in temperature, whatever the heck it may be,
then we know
that
fires will occur. Exactly.
exactly. Then this area is going to be endangered. So let's get all the squirrels, the chipmunks, the deer out of there. Let's go uproot some plants and put them somewhere else where we can keep them safe. I mean, it's essentially
Well,
going to be a lot of teamwork, a lot of communication,
mm,
and a massive logistical effort on part of
exactly.
all of
Exactly.
humanity
Yeah.
to be sure that we're protecting and preserving the species that we have now of both plants and animals. That's what it's going to come down to. So let's talk about what people can do at home. We're always like, okay, well, maybe one singular person won't have a huge difference. But actually, what I really like is this week, one singular person can have a big difference. When you go hiking, it kind of touches upon when we were talking about camping last week. Mountains are the last stronghold against climate change for plant biodiversity. So when you go
Well,
on
plant and
hikes,
animal
yes.
biodiversity. Yeah.
So when you go on hikes, clean up after yourselves. Don't litter, don't start fires and then not no trace them, which I touched upon in the last, I think that made it into the last episode, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Where
definitely.
you
I
no
have
trace.
notes. I have notes.
Yeah, so no tracing
I will
basically
no
like
trace
when you
this
make
weekend.
a when you make a campfire, what you do is when you're done, when you're leaving your campsite, you want to go and get a couple canteens of water and you want to stomp out all the coals, spread them all out, and just take a really big thick stick and almost just like grind them into the ground, pour water on them, keep grinding, keep dragging the stick through them. It's almost like you're making like a stew, but there's no stew. And what that does is not only does it sort of naturalize and put your campsite kind of back in the condition that it was before. Go away. You know what? You make up words all the time. Naturalize, I think, actually is a word. I'm going to Google it in a minute here.
You should Google it.
What it does is it makes it easier for the ground. Naturalize. It's a word.
It is not a word. What does it mean?
Yes, it is. It means it's a verb. It is a verb.
Okay.
And it actually has to do with biology, you asshole. And it says establish a plant or animal so that it lives wild in a region where it is not indigenous. The mo you
that
know.
Is perfect. That is perfect for this episode.
Mm-hmm. Sit down. Anyways, so what it does is it makes it easier for the surrounding, ground and the surrounding area to sort of break down all those coals and, use the nutrition, put it back into the soil so that the plants can grow and everyone can be fine. So when you go hiking, pick up after yourself. Also, really, really important, there's an island up in Maine called Monhegan Island. And right when you get off the ferry, one of the first things you see is a friendly, beautiful sign that says, "Welcome to Monhegan Island. Please do not pick any of the vegetation that is on this island." Because up in Maine, people like to do this thing where they make fairy houses. I don't know if they do this in other parts of the world, but in Maine, it's like a big thing. Like you go out, you find sticks and moss and, not Leica. Well, no, you can if you find some Leica that's on the ground, by all means, it's yours. And they make these little fairy houses, and they're darling, absolutely darling. But unfortunately, what was happening was a lot of people were coming to Monhegan Island for the day, and they were picking moss, like fresh, beautiful moss, right off the side of a tree, or they were ripping ferns right out of the ground, or they were, breaking pine boughs right off of the branch. And I get it. It's a fun thing to do, and it's a cute thing to think about. Like, oh, the fairies. But like when you're doing things like that, use things that are already on the ground. Use pine cones that have already fallen. Use sticks that have already fallen. Like, don't pick mushrooms, but like if you see a base of a tree with like mushrooms, like be careful as you build around it. Like there's little things that you can do to remember that like everything is delicate. And it does need your respect and it does need your attention. And at this point, we really can't afford to go around ripping things out of the ground and off of the sides of trees and rocks because you want to make a goddamn fairy house. That's just not the way it's going to work anymore.
Sorry.
But sorry, but it's just not. So, be mindful when you're out in nature. Realize that you're in something else's home, something else's environment, and be respectful of that. But you know what, Mike? I think we're getting better at this. I do.
think we're too.
I think we're getting better at this. And, the feedback has been really great. We really appreciate all the people that write in. And there's, I know that we don't have a huge presence on Instagram. I know that like Dixon Politics, which is what Mikroscope was born from. I know that that's really sort of like the flagship show, and it's sexy and it's racy, but we love the people that follow us on Mikroscope, and we've caught the eye of some really great nature photographers that I'm trying to have conversations with to see if they'd be interested to come on the show and talk about their travels. I know it's really like, I love this whole community because everyone is really interested in learning and sharing information and being enthusiastic. And I think we have something really special in our audience. So once again, we want to thank you all so much for joining us. And if there is a topic that you would like us to discuss, that you'd like to learn more about, please let us know. We'd be tickled. And we're more than happy to do the research and put it on the show.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. So, Mike, is there anything that you would like to say to our listeners? You're usually pretty quiet when it comes to gratitude, but I think now might be the time to say thanks.
Oh, should I say something? Or so should I say something?
Well, why don't we
Thanks.
talk about this? What does this mean to you, Mike? I mean, as someone who's like never been on stage, never did a podcast, like you just hang out with like your brilliant friends and like that's it. Like, what is it like for you to have this opportunity and this experience?
I think it's so much fun. Like it the best way I could describe it is that I have so much fun doing this. I think,
And I had to drag you into this kicking and screaming,
oh
by
my
the
God, you
way.
did not have to drag me into it. I was just like, I just like, well, the thing is, I really just wanted to build the topics that we talked about and
Mm-hmm.
provide that information. But like all this extra stuff with like interact or not interacting, but like the social media and the
Marketing. Yeah.
marketing and like all this stuff, I know I don't have time for that. And that's where I was very apprehensive of just like, I want to do this, but I know I don't have the time to do it.
Mike doesn't even know how
Unfortunately.
to turn his phone on. So
I
asking him to
never
go
turn
on
it off.
Instagram.
It's always charged. It has to be charged. It can't turn off.
Well, you know what I'm most excited for is I think that what you're studying in particular is really fascinating. And I can absolutely see you 5 years from now, you're in front of an incredible crowd of people, and you're talking about your study and what you and your colleagues found to be true and, what are the steps going forward and,
Mhm.
all this other stuff. I can't wait for you to be like, and while I was working on my PhD, I also started a podcast. And it gave me the opportunity to talk about science in a way that wasn't so intimidating and boring, but rather that could, engage pretty much anyone of any age. And like, I can't wait for that for you because I think this is really good practice. And I know that for the rest of your life, you're going to be surrounded by academia. And I know that you're going to have so much in common with the company that you keep. I know that. But I also know that you're really passionate about what you do and that it's going to present opportunities for you to speak with people outside of the scientific community. And for me, I'm tickled to kind of give you a little bit of a space and a platform to play around with the verbiage a little bit so
I
that
think it's
when,
gotten better.
yeah, I do
I think
too.
from
And I'm,
from definitely from episode one might
oh
be the
yeah.
amount of alcohol that was in my system, but
But still, even with our first episode,
yeah.
I think that we struggled with it a little bit because there was so much that we wanted to say because we're both so passionate about this, but finding a way to say it that isn't confusing, like,
Mhm.
that can be difficult. So I'm thrilled that we can do this together, and I really hope that it proves to be a valuable experience for you. And also, importantly, I hope that our listeners really enjoy this as well. As we say all the time,
Y-
there's all this information out there, and we've
Yeah.
got to just like cut to it and get it right, and that's it.
And I think what I really want to end this with is that we have fun doing this, and we
Yes,
just want other people to get something out of this.
absolutely.
Whether
And
it's one
that's
person or 500,000 people.
no,
I'm
absolutely.
this is fun. This is fun, and if it helps somebody, good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not just for this podcast, but for all the shows that we have under WISP. We have Dixon Politics, we have When I Knew, and we're now releasing It's Bro Time, and we're releasing Game Over. It's Bro Time is all about sports, and Game Over is all about video games, augmented reality, esports, and all this other stuff. Like, we just want to be a source where people can go and get little tidbits of information and learn and get excited about something and find a way to kind of take our words and I never thought I'd say this, but please take my words, twist them, and then make them your own. We
Well,
want
don't twist
everyone.
them
Well,
so
no, don't.
much.
Maybe not on this show. It has to be factual, but you know what I mean. I want people to be able to take what we're saying and sort of memorize it and regurgitate it so that they can start their own conversations. That is why we do everything that we do. We want to get you guys thinking. We want to get you guys talking, not only doing your own research, but also talking to each other. The art of conversation is basically dead, and we want to bring it back to life. So thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us. We're having so much fun doing this. We love it. We appreciate you tuning in every other week. We come out every other Monday. So once again, my name is Samantha.
And my name is Mike, and we'll see you all next week when we talk about climate change trends on Twitter. Oh, I'm so excited about that. I am so excited about that.
Well, it's not next week. It comes out the week after.
Oh, right. Yeah. So in about a month you'll hear that, or in 2 weeks you'll hear that.
About a month. Oh my God. I give up, you guys. We will be back not this following Monday, but the Monday after that. Do the math. We will see you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.